The waiter didn't know his simple act of kindness would change everything. That rainy Tuesday evening started like any other at the small diner on Maple Street. The fluorescent lights flickered. The coffee was bitter. The tips were scarce. Then she wheeled in. Sarah Martinez, 34, paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident 3 years ago. She struggled with the heavy door. Rain soaked her jacket. Her wheels caught on the worn doormat. Everyone looked away. Everyone except Michael. He dropped his order pad mid-sentence and rushed to help. Not because it was his job, not because anyone was watching, but because something deep inside him couldn't bear to see another human being struggle alone. "Let me get that for you," he said softly. What happened next would ripple through more lives than anyone could imagine. Because sometimes the smallest gestures carry the weight of the universe. Sometimes a simple act of human decency can shatter the walls we build around our hearts. You've probably walked past 1,000 moments like this. Opportunities to help, chances to connect. Split seconds where you could choose compassion over comfort, but Michael chose differently that night. And 24 hours later, when his manager called him into that back office, when those words hung in the air like a verdict, when everything he thought he knew about the world turned upside down, he would understand that some moments define us forever. Michael Chen had been waiting tables for 7 years. 7 years of fake smiles. 7 years of aching feet. 7 years of dreams deferred while he served eggs and refilled coffee cups for people who never looked him in the eye. He was invisible. A ghost in an apron. His father had worked in restaurants too. 60-hour weeks that bent his spine and stole his youth. "This is temporary," his father used to say, washing dishes until his hands cracked and bled. "You'll do better than me." But here was Michael, 28 years old, following the same worn path. That night, the diner was nearly empty. Just the usual suspects. Tommy, the trucker who ordered the same burger every Tuesday. Mrs. Chen, no relation, who nursed a single cup of tea for hours while reading romance novels. The college kids in the corner booth, splitting fries and stealing Wi-Fi. Then Sarah wheeled in, and something shifted in the air. You know that feeling when the universe holds its breath? When time seems to slow down and you realize you're standing at a crossroads you didn't even know existed? Michael felt it the moment he saw her struggling. He'd served hundreds of customers with disabilities. Most restaurants train you to help when needed, to be respectful, to accommodate. But this was different. This wasn't about training or policy or doing the right thing because a manager might be watching. This was about recognizing another human being's dignity in a world that so often looks away. The other waitress, Jessica, was closer to the door. She glanced up from her phone, saw Sarah, and quickly looked back down. The cook peered through the service window and disappeared into the kitchen. But Michael moved, without thinking, without calculating. He simply moved toward another person in need. "Thank you," Sarah said as Michael held the door. Her voice carried a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of fighting for space in a world built for people who could walk. Michael guided her to a table, quietly moving chairs to make room. He didn't make a show of it. Didn't act like he was doing something extraordinary. He just created space for her to exist comfortably. "Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" he asked. Sarah smiled. A real smile. Not the polite mask people wear in public, but something genuine that reached her tired eyes. "Coffee would be wonderful. And could you tell me about the specials?" "The board is too far for me to read." For the next few minutes, Michael didn't just recite the specials, he painted them. The way the cook seasoned the meatloaf with his grandmother's secret spice blend. How the apple pie was made fresh that morning, the crust so flaky it practically melted on your tongue. He made a simple diner meal sound like a feast. Because he saw her. Really saw her. Not the wheelchair. Not the inconvenience. Not the extra effort. He saw a woman who deserved the same warmth and attention as anyone else who walked through that door. You might think this is nothing special, just a waiter doing his job. But when was the last time someone truly saw you? Not your role, not your function, not what you could do for them, but you in all your complex humanity. Sarah ordered the meatloaf special. And as Michael walked back to place her order, she watched him go with an expression that would have broken your heart if you'd seen it. Because kindness, real kindness, is so rare that when we encounter it, We almost don't know how to respond. She'd been to a dozen restaurants since the accident. Most were polite, some were awkward. A few were openly irritated by the extra work she represented. But Michael was different. And differences, even small ones, can change everything. The kitchen was its usual chaos. Orders backed up, the dishwasher making that grinding noise again. Steam and grease and the constant dance of barely controlled disaster that is every restaurant kitchen everywhere. "Table 6 wants extra gravy," Michael called out. Carlos, the cook, grunted acknowledgement while flipping 3 burgers simultaneously. They'd worked together for 4 years, developed that wordless communication that comes from surviving countless dinner rushes side by side. "Hey, Carlos," Michael said, leaning into the service window. "Make that meatloaf special extra nice, yeah?" "The lady at table 12? I think she's had a rough day." Carlos looked up. In most kitchens, special requests for non-VIP customers are met with eye rolls and cursing. But Carlos had his own story, his own reasons for understanding that sometimes a good meal is about more than food. "You got it, hermano." This is how kindness spreads. Not in grand gestures or viral moments, but in quiet decisions behind the scenes. A cook taking extra care with a plate, a waiter seeing past the surface. Small choices that add up to something bigger than their sum. Michael returned to check on Sarah 3 times during her meal. Not hovering, not intrusive, just present. Available. He refilled her coffee before she had to ask. Brought extra napkins without making a fuss. When she struggled to reach the salt shaker, he casually moved it closer while asking about her evening. "I'm a teacher," she told him between bites. "4th grade. Today was just one of those days, you know?" Michael did know. Everyone who's ever worked in service knows. Those days when the world feels too heavy and a kind word from a stranger can be the difference between breaking and carrying on. They talked for a few minutes about her students, about the challenges of teaching, about how kids these days were simultaneously more connected and more isolated than ever before. And for those few minutes, the diner became something more than a place to grab quick food. It became a space for human connection. A reminder that we're all just trying to make it through. You might not realize how powerful this is. In our rushed world, where efficiency is valued over empathy, where we're trained to see people as transactions rather than souls, these moments of genuine connection are revolutionary acts. As Sarah finished her meal, the diner began to fill with the late-night crowd. Hospital workers ending their shifts, security guards grabbing dinner before the graveyard shift, the lonely and the sleepless seeking comfort in coffee and conversation. Michael's section filled up, 5 tables, 6, 7. In most restaurants, this is when service suffers, when waiters become curt and customers become numbers. But Michael had learned something from his father, who had learned it from his father before him. Grace under pressure is what separates those who serve from those who simply work. He moved with practiced efficiency, but never rushed. Each customer received the same attention, the same genuine smile. Even as orders piled up and the kitchen fell behind, he maintained that quality of presence that made people feel seen. Sarah watched him work, watched how he juggled multiple demands without losing his humanity, how he remembered that Mrs. Chen liked her tea with honey, not sugar, how he made each table feel like they were his only priority, even when they clearly weren't. This is mastery, not just of a job, but of being human in difficult circumstances. When you're struggling with your own challenges, when life feels overwhelming and unfair, it's easy to close off, to protect yourself by caring less, to survive by feeling less. But Michael had chosen a different path. He decided that his circumstances wouldn't define his character, that even if he was just a waiter, he would be the kind of waiter who reminded people that kindness still existed in the world. Sarah finished her meal and signaled for the check. As Michael approached, she was already reaching for her purse, preparing for the awkward dance of payment that always seemed more complicated from a wheelchair. "Take your time," Michael said gently. "No rush at all." But there was something else in his voice. Something Sarah couldn't quite place. A sadness, maybe. Or perhaps just the weight of too many long shifts and too many dreams deferred. She wanted to say something, to acknowledge what he'd done for her evening. "But how do you thank someone for treating you like a human being?" How do you express gratitude for something that should be common but feels miraculous when you receive it? The check was 18 to 47s, a meatloaf special, coffee, and a slice of that apple pie Michael had described so lovingly. Sarah pulled out her wallet, worn leather that had seen better days, and counted out $25. "Keep the change," she said, pressing the bills into Michael's hand. "That's very generous," Michael replied. "Thank you," but Sarah wasn't done. She looked up at him, really looked at him, the way he had looked at her when she first came in. "Can I ask you something?" Michael nodded, though he could feel his other tables waiting. "Why did you help me? I mean, really help me, not just do your job." The question hung in the air between them. In the background, the diner's familiar symphony played on, clinking dishes, sizzling grills, the murmur of conversation. But in that moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. Michael considered his answer. He could give the polite response, the professional response. But something about Sarah's directness deserved honesty. "My grandmother," he said finally. "She had MS. Toward the end, she needed a wheelchair. I remember going places with her, watching how people reacted. Some were kind, but most—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Most looked through her, like she'd become invisible the moment she couldn't walk." Sarah's eyes glistened. She used to say that the measure of a society is how it treats those who need help. Not the help itself, but the spirit behind it. Whether we see need as a burden or as an opportunity to affirm someone's humanity. You carry your wounds with you. Everyone does. Sometimes they make you bitter, sometimes they make you cruel, but sometimes, if you're lucky or brave or both, they make you kind. Michael's wound had become his wisdom. His grandmother's struggle had taught him to see, really see. Not just disabilities or difficulties, but the full human being experiencing them. "She sounds like a wise woman," Sarah said softly. "She was." Michael agreed. "She died 2 years ago, but I try to honor her memory by remembering that everyone is fighting some kind of battle. And maybe the best we can do is make those battles a little easier for each other. This is the truth we all know but forget. Every person you meet is carrying something heavy. Every smile might be hiding pain. Every normal day might be someone's hardest day. What if we lived like we really believed that?" Sarah left the diner different than she'd entered. Not just drier or fuller, but somehow lighter. As if Michael's kindness had lifted some invisible weight she'd been carrying. The rain had stopped. The evening air smelled fresh and clean, full of possibility. She wheeled herself to her specially modified van, thinking about her fourth graders. Tomorrow she would tell them about the waiter who reminded her that good people still existed. She would use it as a lesson about character, about choosing kindness even when no one is watching. Inside the diner, Michael cleared her table and pocketed the tip. $7 on an $18 check. More than generous, especially from someone who was clearly watching her budget. But it wasn't about the money, it never is with the best encounters. Jessica, the other waitress, sidled up to him. "Why'd you spend so much time with her? You had like 6 other tables." Michael shrugged. "She needed it." Mr. Davidson was practically waving his arms for more coffee. Mr. Davidson can wait 30 seconds for coffee. Some things matter more. Jessica rolled her eyes and walked away, muttering about tips and efficiency. She wasn't a bad person, just young, focused on the wrong metrics. She measured success in turnover and tips. Michael measured it in something harder to quantify but infinitely more valuable. The rest of the shift passed in the usual blur. Orders taken, food delivered, tables cleaned, repeat. But something had shifted in Michael. That brief connection with Sarah had reminded him why he'd stayed in this job despite its frustrations. Not for the money, certainly. Not for the career prospects. But for these moments, these opportunities to matter in someone's day. To be the person who sees, who helps, who cares. You might think this is a small thing. In the grand scheme of the universe, what's one pleasant interaction in a roadside diner? But kindness is like dropping a stone in still water. The ripples spread farther than you can see. Sarah would be kinder to her students tomorrow because of how Michael treated her tonight. Those students would carry that kindness home to their families, and on, circles widening, touching lives in ways we can never fully trace. This is how the world changes, not all at once, but one interaction at a time, one choice at a time. One human being deciding to see another human being and respond with grace. The next morning arrived like any other. Michael's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. The apartment was cold. His roommate snored through thin walls. Coffee, shower, the same collared shirt he'd worn 3 times this week because laundry cost money and money was always tight. He arrived at the diner at 6:45, 15 minutes before his shift. Maria, the morning manager, was already there, counting the register and muttering about inventory. She barely looked up when he walked in. "Morning, Maria." "Michael," a pause. "Mr. Patterson wants to see you when he gets in." Michael's stomach dropped. Mr. Patterson was the owner. In 7 years, Michael had spoken to him maybe a dozen times. "You didn't get called to see Mr. Patterson for good reasons." "Did he say what about?" Maria shrugged, still focused on her numbers. "Just said to make sure you didn't leave before he talked to you." The morning rush began, but Michael couldn't focus. Had someone complained? Had he done something wrong? His mind raced through the previous night's shift. Everything had been normal. Well, except for no. Surely no one would complain about him helping a customer. Would they? But in his experience, people complained about everything. Too much attention, not enough attention. Coffee too hot. Coffee too cold. In the service industry, you learned that you couldn't please everyone and someone was always ready to find fault. The breakfast crowd was its usual mix of regulars and travelers. Michael went through the motions, but his heart wasn't in it. He kept glancing at the door, waiting for Mr. Patterson's silver Mercedes to pull into the parking lot. "You okay?" Carlos asked during a brief lull. "You seem off." "Patterson wants to see me." Carlos winced. "What did you do?" "That's just it. I don't know. Maybe it's good news. Maybe you're getting a raise." Carlos grinned, but they both knew better. Raises were as rare as unicorns in places like this. At 9:17 a.m., the silver Mercedes appeared. Michael watched through the window as Mr. Patterson emerged, straightening his tie, checking his phone. He was the kind of owner who showed up just often enough to make everyone nervous, but not often enough to actually understand the daily operations. Michael's hands shook slightly as he delivered coffee to table 3. Whatever was coming, he'd face it. He'd survived 7 years in this business. He could survive whatever Mr. Patterson had to say. But as he watched his boss walk through the door as their eyes met across the crowded diner, Michael felt something he hadn't expected. Not fear, not worry, but a strange sense that something important was about to happen. That last night's simple act of kindness had set something in motion that was bigger than he could understand. Sometimes the universe conspires to remind us that we matter, that our choices matter, that the small things we do when no one is watching can change everything. Michael was about to learn just how true that was. "Michael, come on back," Mr. Patterson said, gesturing toward the small office behind the kitchen. The walk felt endless, past the bustling kitchen where Carlos gave him a sympathetic look, past the storage room with its towers of paper goods and industrial-sized cans, into the cramped office that smelled of old coffee and disappointment. Mr. Patterson closed the door, sat behind the desk. Michael remained standing, unsure what protocol demanded in moments like this. "Sit," Mr. Patterson said. "Please." Michael sat. The chair creaked under him, a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the small space. "I got a call last night," Mr. Patterson began, and Michael's heart sank. Here it comes, he thought. Someone had complained. Maybe Jessica, annoyed that he'd spent too much time with one customer. Maybe another customer who'd had to wait an extra minute for service, from a woman named Sarah Martinez. The name hit Michael like a physical force. Sarah had called to complain after everything? He felt something inside him break a little. Was kindness really so unexpected that people felt the need to report it as suspicious? "She wanted to tell me about her experience here last night. About you, specifically." Michael waited. In his experience, the next words would be about how he'd made her uncomfortable, or overstepped, or violated some corporate policy about maintaining professional distance. "She said you were the reason she didn't give up yesterday." The words didn't compute. Michael blinked, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry?" "Mr. Patterson leaned back in his chair, studying Michael with an expression he'd never seen before. "She said she'd had the worst day of her life. That she'd been told that morning that the experimental treatment she'd been hoping for wasn't going to work. That she'd have to accept that the wheelchair was permanent. No miracles. No recovery. Michael's throat tightened. She said she came here because she couldn't face going home yet, that she was sitting in the parking lot trying to find the strength to keep going, when she decided to come in for coffee, just to delay the inevitable return to her empty apartment. You know those moments when the world shifts on its axis? When you realize that what seemed ordinary was actually extraordinary? When you understand that you were part of something bigger without even knowing it? She said your kindness saved her, not in some metaphorical way. She meant it literally. She'd been considering, well, she'd been in a very dark place. But the way you treated her, the way you saw her as a person instead of a problem, reminded her that there was still good in the world. Still reasons to stay. Michael couldn't speak. His eyes burned with unshed tears. She wanted me to know what kind of person I had working for me. She said most businesses would kill to have someone like you representing them. Someone who understood that service isn't about food or efficiency or even customer satisfaction. It's about humanity. The office fell silent except for the distant clatter of dishes and the hum of the ancient air conditioner. Mr. Patterson opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. I've owned this place for 15 years. Inherited it from my father, who ran it for 20 years before that. In all that time, I've never received a call like that. He slid the envelope across the desk. I'm not good at this kind of thing, Mr. Patterson continued. I'm a numbers guy, profit margins and food costs and labor percentages, but last night Sarah Martinez reminded me why places like this matter, not because of the food or the convenience, but because sometimes a diner is the only place someone can go to feel human again. Michael picked up the envelope with trembling hands. That's a raise. Effective immediately, and I want you to start training our new hires. Teach them what you know. Not just about taking orders and carrying plates, but about seeing people, really seeing them. Inside the envelope was a check, not life-changing money. This was still a small diner after all, but enough to matter. Enough to mean Michael could fix his car, could catch up on bills, could maybe, just maybe, start saving for those night classes he'd been dreaming about. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll help me turn this place into something more than just another diner. Sarah was right. Most businesses would kill to have someone like you. I've been too blind to see it. This is how change happens, not through corporate initiatives or training programs or motivational posters, but through one person doing the right thing and another person recognizing its value. Michael thought about his father, washing dishes until his hands bled. About his grandmother, facing the world from a wheelchair with dignity and grace. About all the invisible people who kept the world running through simple acts of service and kindness. There's one more thing, Mr. Patterson said. Sarah left her number, said she'd like to thank you properly. Maybe grab coffee somewhere you're not working. He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually stern face. I told her you had my full permission to take her up on that. Michael looked at the slip of paper with Sarah's number. Thought about the ripples that spread from a single stone dropped in still water. Thought about how the smallest gestures could save a life. You never know when your kindness might be the thing that keeps someone going. You never know when your choice to see someone, really see them, might be the difference between despair and hope. This is the power you carry with you every day. The power to matter. The power to save. The power to remind someone that they're worth seeing, worth helping, worth loving. The news spread through the diner like wildfire. Not the details. Michael kept those private out of respect for Sarah. But word got out that he'd been promoted, that he'd be training new staff, that Mr. Patterson had actually smiled. Jessica approached him during the afternoon lull. I'm sorry, she said quietly, about what I said last night, about you spending too much time with that customer. You didn't know, Michael replied. That's just it. We never know, do we? What someone's going through, what they need. She paused, fidgeting with her order pad. Would you teach me? How to really see people. This is how kindness multiplies. One person chooses compassion, another witnesses it and wants to learn. And suddenly, an entire culture begins to shift. Carlos clapped Michael on the back during shift change. Proud of you, Hermano. You deserve this. Even Maria, usually all business, pulled him aside. I've worked here 12 years, she said. Never seen Patterson like that. You did something special. But Michael knew the truth. He hadn't done anything special. He'd simply treated another human being with dignity and respect. The fact that this was seen as extraordinary said more about the world than it did about him. That evening, as his shift ended, Michael stood in the parking lot where Sarah had sat the night before, gathering courage to come inside. He thought about all the people who passed through these doors, all the stories, all the struggles, all the opportunities to make a difference. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Michael. This is Sarah. I hope Mr. Patterson gave you my number. I wanted to thank you again. You'll never know what your kindness meant to me. Would you like to get that coffee sometime? Somewhere you don't have to serve it to me?" Michael smiled, typing his response. "I'd like that very much. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need exactly when you need it. Sometimes a terrible day leads to a beautiful connection. Sometimes the thing that seems like a burden becomes a blessing." Sarah had come to the diner broken and left with hope. Michael had gone to work expecting another ordinary shift and discovered his extraordinary impact. Two lives intersecting at just the right moment, creating something neither could have imagined. This happens more than you think, these moments of grace, these opportunities for connection. But you have to be open to them. You have to choose to see them. You have to decide that efficiency matters less than empathy, that kindness matters more than convenience. 3 months later, Sarah wheeled into the diner again, but this time, she wasn't alone. 24 fourth graders followed behind her, eyes wide with excitement about their field trip to learn about community workers. Michael had prepared for weeks. He'd arranged with Mr. Patterson to give the kids a behind-the-scenes tour. Carlos would show them how to flip pancakes. Maria would let them take turns at the register. Jessica had baked cookies shaped like tiny coffee cups. But first, Sarah had something to say. "Kids, this is my friend Michael," she announced. "He's the person I told you about, the one who reminded me that kindness can change everything." The children stared at Michael with that intense curiosity only 9-year-olds possess. He felt suddenly nervous, more nervous than he'd ever been serving difficult customers or dealing with dinner rushes. "Mr. Michael," one brave soul piped up. "Miss Martinez says you're a hero. But you don't look like a hero." The adults laughed. Michael knelt down to the child's level. "That's because real heroes don't wear capes or fly. Real heroes are all around you. They're the people who choose to help when they could walk away, who choose to be kind when they could be indifferent, who choose to see people when the world tells them to look away." "Can anyone be a hero?" another child asked. "Anyone," Michael confirmed. "Every single day you have chances to be someone's hero. Maybe it's sharing your lunch with someone who forgot theirs. Maybe it's including someone who feels left out. Maybe it's just smiling at someone who looks sad. These seem like small things, but small things can save people." Sarah watched this exchange with tears in her eyes. She'd told Michael, over many coffee dates that had become something more, how his kindness had pulled her back from the edge, how it had reminded her that life was still worth living even if it looked different than she'd planned. But Michael had shared his own truth too. How serving her that night had reminded him why he stayed in this job. How it had renewed his faith in the power of human connection. How she'd saved him too, in a way, from the cynicism that threatened to consume anyone who worked in service too long. They'd saved each other. That's what kindness does. It flows both ways, healing the giver as much as the receiver. The field trip was a massive success. The kids left with full bellies and fuller hearts, chattering about their favorite parts. Several announced they wanted to be waiters when they grew up, which made their teacher laugh. As they prepared to leave, Sarah pulled Michael aside. "Thank you for everything. For showing them that heroes come in all forms. For showing me that life after tragedy can still be beautiful." "Thank you," Michael replied, "for reminding me that what we do matters, that how we do it matters even more. You have this power. Right now. Today. The power to be someone's reason to keep going. The power to remind someone of their worth. The power to change a life with something as simple as genuine kindness. Don't underestimate it. Don't dismiss it as too small or too ordinary. Because in a world that often feels dark and disconnected, your light matters more than you know." That waiter who helped a disabled customer without hesitation, he didn't just pour coffee that night, he poured hope. He served more than food. He served a reminder that humanity still exists, still cares, still sees. And the next day when his manager called him in? It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of understanding that our smallest actions can have the biggest impact, that kindness is never wasted, that seeing people, really seeing them, might be the most revolutionary act of all. So look around. Who needs to be seen today? Who needs to be reminded that they matter? Whose life could you change with a simple act of compassion? The opportunity is there. It's always there, waiting for someone brave enough to take it. Be that someone. Because you never know when your kindness might be the reason someone chooses to stay, when your compassion might be the thing that restores someone's faith, when your simple act of seeing someone might save a life. This is your power. This is your chance. This is your moment to matter. What will you do with it? If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness, then please, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your own stories of unexpected kindness in the comments below. Because this channel is for those who believe that small acts can change lives, that seeing people matters, and that kindness is the most powerful force in the universe. Together, we can remind the world that heroes don't wear capes. They wear aprons. They serve coffee. They see people. And they choose, every single day, to make the world a little brighter. Join us. Be the light someone needs today.